Hello students, welcome to Byju's IAS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we'll be taking up some of the very important articles that have appeared in various business related newspapers and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, I've chosen the time period from 21st to 27th December 2020 and the articles that I've chosen are from Business Line, Hindu, Business Standard, Indian Express, Live Mint and Financial Express. Let's begin the discussion. The first article is with respect to Government of India taking certain measures to promote India's ranking in ease of doing business report. Now, first and foremost, certain very important points related to this particular report. This is an annual report which is published by World Bank. In this particular report, the World Bank basically measures performance of various countries under 10 parameters. And based on the performance of various countries in these particular parameters, the countries are ranked. In case of India, India's performance in the last couple of years has improved by a huge margin. In the year 2015, India's ranking was 142nd and as per the latest ranking, India stands at 63rd position out of 190 countries. So you can see that India's ranking has leapfrogged in the last couple of years. This has been because of certain very important reforms which are taken by Government of India under these particular parameters. On what parameters basically these particular countries are ranked? I mentioned 10 parameters. These particular 10 parameters are enforcement of contracts, registering property, resolving insolvency, starting a business, paying taxes, trading across border. Then there is protecting minority investors, getting access to credit, getting the construction permits, etc. In case of these particular parameters, one point you must note is this. In 4 of these particular parameters, India's ranking has been very good. As per the latest report, India's ranking in these particular 4 parameters is between 13th to 27th rank. And remaining 6 parameters, which are the 6 parameters? These are the 5 and trading across the border. These are the 6 parameters in which India's performance has not been very satisfactory, or to be more precise, it has been pretty bad. So Government of India in recent times has announced that it will be implementing certain reforms or taking certain steps in order to ensure that India's performance even in these particular 6 parameters will improve, as a result of which India will be able to rank within the top 50 countries. And this has been the goal of Government of India from the last couple of years. Now another very important point related to the concept of ease of doing business report is, earlier in case of India, the 2 cities which were considered for evaluation were one Delhi and second one Mumbai. Very recently this particular list has been expanded. Now 4 cities are being considered in case of India for evaluation. In addition to these 2, the other 2 very important cities are one Kolkata and the second one is Bangalore. So these are the 4 cities which are considered for evaluation of Indian economy, or to be more precise, evaluation of India under these particular 10 parameters. Next, what reforms or what steps are being proposed? What Government of India wants to achieve using these particular measures? First and foremost, with respect to enforcement of contracts. As per the latest ranking, India stands at 163rd position out of 190 countries under this particular parameter. Now, under this particular parameter, the report notes that in case of India, it takes around 1445 days for enforcement of contract. And not only this, it takes around 31% of the value of the contract for enforcement of the contract. That is basically the expenditure incurred for enforcement of contract is 31% of the value of the contract. Now Government of India wants to bring this down to 1200 days. That's the first very important point. Second, they are basically considering setting up of commercial courts which will ensure that these particular cases or commercial disputes will be heard on day-to-day basis and the dispute resolution with respect to enforcement of contract will be done much sooner. In order to ensure this, Government of India, or to be more precise, various state governments have proposed setting up of commercial courts at different avenues. For example, Delhi has announced that it will be setting up more than 20 such courts. Mumbai has announced it will be setting up 16 such courts. This is some of the very important reforms that are being taken under the concept of enforcement of contract. Next very important parameter, registering property. India's ranking 154th. Government of India basically says that they want to reduce the expenditure that is incurred to register property. And not only this, they also want to ensure that the number of days which are taken to register the property are also reduced. As per the report, it basically says that as of now, the value of the property, that is basically the expenditure which is incurred in terms of value of the property to register property, stands at around 7.8%. And it takes around 58 days to register the property. Government of India wants to reduce this to 7.3% and this to 38 days. And in order to do this, basically Government of India is on a drive to digitize the land titles. Next, resolving insolvency. India's ranking is 52nd. Now, Government of India wants to promote India's performance even under this particular parameter. In order to do that, Government of India wants to ensure that there is a timely disposal of cases and there is a broad basing of committee of creditors. Now, with respect to timely disposal of the cases, earlier as per the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the number of days that was supposed to be taken for insolvency resolution was 180 plus 90 days. That is essentially 270 days. But in many of the cases, it was seen that because of some of the creditors taking the case to the judiciary, the number of days which was taken for the insolvency resolution was much beyond this particular 270 days. To address this particular situation, Government of India very recently has amended the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and now it basically says that the insolvency resolution, including the intervention of the judiciary, has to be done within 330 days. So this is with respect to insolvency resolution. Next, in terms of starting a business, present ranking for India is 136. Government of India has basically stated that the number of days that are taken to start a business in case of India comes at around 18 days. They want to reduce it to 6 days. In addition to this, the number of compliances are 10. They want to reduce it to less than 4. In addition to this, integration of registration under ESIC, EPFO and GST with company incorporation is also being proposed. Next, a very important parameter, paying taxes. India's ranking is 115th. Now under this, Government of India has basically stated that right now the number of hours which are taken to file the taxes is 252 hours. We want to reduce it to 152 hours. And we also want to reduce the compliance time for GST, ESI as well as EPFO. Now apart from this, the sixth very important parameter is trading across the border. Now under this particular parameter, Government of India has basically stated that they want to reduce the number of hours that are taken for imports as well as exports. In both the cases, they want to reduce the number of hours to 48 hours. In addition to this, whatever clearances are supposed to be provided, they want to automate these particular clearances. So these are certain very important reforms that Government of India has proposed in order to improve India's ranking and break into the barrier of top 50 countries under the ease of doing business report. Now apart from this, another very important point that you must note is, yes, it is very important for the central government to implement these particular reforms. And as a result of these particular reforms, yes, ease of doing business in India is going to improve. And not only this, some of these particular reforms will actually yield or result into structural reforms at the ground level. But one very important point that has been raised with respect to these particular reforms is that these particular reforms are being proposed by the central government. But apart from the central government, it is the state government which plays a very important role in implementation of many of these particular reforms. Now in this particular scenario, the article basically says that there has to be a cooperation as well as a coordination between both the center as well as states in order to ensure successful implementation of these particular reforms. especially in these particular cities such as Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata and Bangalore, because these are the four cities which are considered for evaluation of performance of India under this particular report. So these are certain very important points mentioned in this particular article. Based on this, I have given a question here. Which of the following cities are considered for ease of doing business rankings of World Bank? Delhi, yes. Mumbai, yes. Chennai, not considered. Bangalore, yes. Kolkata, yes. These are the four cities. So right option will be option 1, 2, 4 and 5, option C. Next, I have also given a descriptive question here. The steps taken by the government to improve the ranking and the ease of doing business will lead to certain structural reforms at the ground level. Discuss in 250 words. Next article is with respect to evaluation of Vivad Se Vishwas. In the earlier videos, we have already discussed what is this idea for Vivad Se Vishwas. Now, there has been an update given with respect to this particular scheme which has been proposed by the Government of India. In a nutshell, Vivad Se Vishwas was announced by Government of India in the budget which was presented on February 1st, 2020. Under this, basically the tax disputes which are pending, these particular tax disputes, these are the tax legacy disputes. These particular disputes would be addressed by the taxpayer paying the disputed amount. And once he has paid the disputed amount, the interest, penalty, whatever it is there associated with this particular disputed amount will be waived off. Initially, 31st December was the due date or the last date for taxpayers availing this particular Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. Now this has been extended up to 31st March of 2021. So these are certain important points or basic points related to Vivad Se Vishwas. Now what has been given in this particular article? The article basically mentions that there are more than 4 lakh such tax disputes or tax cases which are pending. Not only this, these particular more than 4 lakh cases, that is the tax disputes, the value of this is 9.3 trillion. But as of November 17, 2020, the government has been able to collect only around 72,480 crore rupees. So the amount of a dispute is how much? 9.3 trillion rupees. Out of this, only over 72,000 crore rupees so far has been collected by the government. Now the article basically mentions that it is not the fault of the tax officials that this collection is lower compared to what is the value of the disputed amount. The problem with respect to this particular scheme is that the design of the scheme is faulty. Many of the times it is because of the jealousy of the tax officials that they have ended up estimating a tax demand of a very higher value, and they have sent the tax notice to the taxpayer. The taxpayer will basically contest this particular tax demand of the government. The case will go to the court, and many of the times, that is the article mentions that more than 90% of the times the rulings are given in the favor of the taxpayer. In essence, the government is on the losing side. Not only this, earlier also the tax department itself had sent a notice to the tax officials not to go for very high assessment and demand very high amount of a tax, as a result of which there is a dispute with respect to the tax payment. Despite this particular directive or guideline being issued by the department, there is always a very high assessment as well as a high demand for the tax, and the number of disputes have kept on increasing over a period of time. So these are certain very important points which are given in this particular article. In addition to this, the article also mentions that Government of India, looking at this particular figure, is now pressurizing the tax official to increase the tax collections. So these are certain important points given in the article. Next article is with respect to land records. Now certain very important points which are discussed in this particular article are: 1. Land is a state subject. Second, in case of India, 77% of the assets of the household are in the form of land assets. Whereas in case of a country such as USA, it comes at around 40%, which essentially means in large number of households, the amount of the asset or the value of the asset that they actually hold is in the form of a land. Now the problem with respect to land in case of India is the titling. The titling is not very clear. are not conclusive in case of India. However, having said so, in the last 30 plus years, Government of India has been implementing various reforms in order to provide a very clear title with respect to land records. For example, in 1988, Government of India launched a Land Records Modernization Program. Again in the year 2008, UPA government launched National Land Records Modernization Program. Now this has been taken under Digital India program or initiative now. So basically what I'm trying to say is, in the last 30 plus years, Government of India has taken various reforms to provide modernization or digitization of the land records so that the land titles are very clear. However, these particular reforms have been moving at a very slow or snail's pace, as a result of which in majority of the areas even today there are certain issues with respect to land titles. What kind of issues I am referring to here? For example, if you want to get clear information with respect to what is the boundary of the land, are there any disputes over the ownership of a land, etc. These kind of informations or this kind of information data related to land is not readily available today. This will basically lead to certain issues. What are the issues? First one, since majority of the households in case of India have their assets in the form of a land and there is no clear titling with respect to this, they are stuck up with respect to this particular land and they are not able to monetize this particular asset. Especially in case of a rural India, it is said that one of the reasons why majority of the households in rural India are stuck with agriculture sector is because they are unable to monetize or sell off their particular land. That is the second issue. Third very important issue, very recently the rising trend or increasing trend is that the subsidies in the agriculture sector are getting attached to the idea of a land holding. That is basically the subsidies are getting transferred to the owner of the land. Now if the ownership or the title itself is not clear, it will become more complicated in order to transfer the subsidies in the agriculture sector. So these are certain issues which are plaguing the Indian economy with respect to land titles not being very clear. Now in this particular article they have discussed the case of China. What has happened in case of China? Post 1970s, what has happened in case of China is, in addition to the agriculture, the Chinese government also has provided various different sources of income for the people who are living in rural part of China. That is, in case of China, the government there has basically promoted the idea of rural enterprises. This has become an alternative sources of revenue for the people living in rural China. As a result of this, they have monetized their land, they have got themselves involved in enterprises. The article mentions that the output, that is the production of these particular rural enterprises on an annual basis, have increased by more than 23% annually post that. So this is an example which has been given from the context of China. Now in addition to this, the article mentions that very recently Government of India has launched a Swamitwa scheme. Under this particular Swamitwa scheme, government will be creating land property IDs. That is basically ID cards will be created for the property or the land in Abadi villages or those particular habited villages. In essence, the government is creating the documentation of a land for which no documentation existed earlier. But even with respect to this particular scheme, the article mentions one very important critical issue. This particular scheme is being implemented by Ministry of Panchayati Raj, whereas the property documentation in case of India is maintained at the state level. So again there is a need to ensure that these particular property documents are updated, are in sync in both the levels in order to ensure that the scheme is implemented seamlessly over a period of time. So these are certain very important points with respect to the land records in case of India. The next article is with respect to the Electricity Rights of Consumers Rules 2020. Government of India very recently has notified these particular rules. Now certain very important points related to this particular concept. First and foremost, it is the DISCOMs which have the duty to distribute electricity to the end consumers. These particular DISCOMs are either owned by the private companies or owned by the state governments. The central government basically says that whether these are owned by the private company or the state government, these essentially are having a monopoly status in the market. In essence, what they're trying to say is this: consumers do not have the option of choosing from whom they want to purchase the electricity. As a result of which, the consumer cannot demand the access to quality electricity, uninterrupted electricity, so on and so forth. In order to address these particular issues which are faced by the consumers, Government of India has basically notified the Electricity Rights of Consumers Rules 2020. Under this, basically Government of India has stated that there will be 24/7 supply of electricity. If the quality electricity which is prescribed by the Commission is not met, then the supplier can be imposed with fines, and these particular fines which are collected shall be transferred to the consumers. The Government of India also says that with implementation of these particular rights of consumers rules, certain areas that will be covered will be: one, the interest of the consumers; second, certain obligation on the distribution of licenses will also be covered; third, metering arrangements will be covered; fourth, release of new connections, certain guidelines will be issued with respect to this also; fifth, grievance redressal mechanism related to this shall be set up as per the rules of 2020. Sixth, compensation mechanism shall also be set up. So these are the 6 important areas under which the rules have been framed by Government of India under this particular Electricity Rights of Consumers Rules 2020. In addition to this, also understand this, under this the standard of services also have been defined by the government. For example, for every service that is provided by the agency or the DISCOM, it has to list all of these particular services in a website. Not only this, in case of getting an electricity connection in a normal area, the time period which has been prescribed under this particular rules is 7 days. And different time limits have been given for different regions as such. So these are certain very important areas which have been covered under this particular Electricity Rights of Consumers Rules 2020. Now based on this, I have given a question here and I will discuss certain very important aspects even under these particular questions. Which of the following are covered under the new Electricity Rules of 2020? Release of new connections, yes, time frame has been prescribed under this. Grievance redressal and compensation mechanism, already mentioned, yes. Obligations of the distribution licensees, yes. What is the quality of electricity? How many hours of electricity should be supplied to whom? Should there be a same number of hours of electricity supplied for agriculture sector, for a common household? All of these will be prescribed under these particular rules. So all the 3 points are there. Right option is option D. Which of the following are covered under the new Electricity Rules 2020? All the consumers should be supplied with 24/7 electricity. Although the statement looks correct, please make a note of this. This is wrong. The rules basically state that the households will be getting access to 24/7 electricity, but certain consumers such as agriculture sector could be supplied with different number of hours of electricity. But that will be defined, that will be basically detailed when the commission will come out with these particular guidelines. Second, has the provisions for net and gross metering. This statement is correct. Now the concept is what is a net metering and what is a gross metering. Let's assume there is a household here and this particular household has set up the solar panels. Obviously when the solar panels have been set up, electricity is generated. Now this particular electricity will be supplied to the grid. That is basically it will be supplied to the DISCOM. Now using this you will have to understand the concept of a net metering and a gross metering. In case of a net metering, what generally happens is when the household will supply, that is basically generate electricity and supply electricity on one side and consume electricity on the other side. Obviously the household will get access to electricity which is supplied by the DISCOM. Let's say 10 units of electricity are generated by the household using solar energy. And on the other hand, it has consumed 100 units of electricity. So whenever the bill is given to this particular household, this 10 units of electricity which is supplied by the household to the grid will be deducted from this and the bill will be given for 90 units. This concept is called as a net metering. On the other hand, gross metering basically refers to a concept wherein when the household will supply 10 units of electricity, it will be paid separately for this. And when the household consumes 100 units of electricity, it will be charged separately for this. This concept is called as a gross metering. Some of the states already have a concept of a net metering, but in these particular states, the DISCOMs are now basically saying that we have to shift from the net metering to gross metering, as the DISCOMs are saying that because of net metering, they are incurring losses because of this. So this is there in the newspaper. Please be very, very careful. So basically this particular statement is correct. Under this particular rules, it has provisions for both net metering as well as gross metering. So based on this, the right option will be option B, only 2 is true. Next article is with respect to incentives and fertilizers. Now certain very important points to discuss in the article are basically this. In case of the fertilizers, there is a urea and there is a diammonium phosphate and muriate of potash. So in case of India, urea prices are regulated by government. In essence, these are fixed. MRP is fixed by government. Whereas related to these two, the prices are fixed by the suppliers or private companies. As a result of this, in case of urea, these are highly subsidized fertilizers. Even in case of a DAP, MOP, subsidy is provided, but the market prices are much higher compared to urea. Essentially, the urea prices range somewhere in the amount of 270 rupees plus or minus here and there. Whereas in case of a DAP and MOP, the market prices are somewhere in the range of 900 to 1300 rupees. Again, the prices could be varying. Please not be worried about the exact prices. The article basically says that since the urea prices are highly subsidized and are the cheapest in the market, the farmers are consuming a large amount of urea, as a result of which there are negative implications with respect to quality of soil. This article basically discusses that the government of India should simultaneously start increasing the price of urea and start decreasing the price of a DAP as well as MOP. That is the reason the heading basically says incentivize a balanced use of fertilizers. Basically that is a demand raised by the farmers' body. In addition to this, another point which is mentioned in the article, not related to fertilizers per se, is basically that there is a demand that government of India should be reducing the taxes that it has imposed on fuels. In recent times, government of India has been imposing higher amount of taxes on petrol as well as diesel, as a result of which the retail prices of both of these particular fuels have been increasing and have been very high. The article basically says that these particular taxes should be reduced so that the market prices of these particular fuels will come down and the contribution of this to retail inflation will also come down. So these are the 2 points which are discussed in this particular article. Now let's go to the next article, which is with respect to tax disputes. I have taken 2 very important articles here. One is with respect to Kane Energy dispute and the other one, Government of India filing against the order of Vodafone case. Now let's go with the first one, the Kane Energy dispute. Now basically what has happened is this. Earlier, Kane Energy basically underwent an internal reorganization. You need not be worried about what kind of internal reorganization was done by Kane Energy. That is not the purview of UPSC. But essentially you need to understand this. This company went for internal reorganization in the year 2006. Then in the year 2014, the tax officials basically asked the details of this kind of a reorganization which was conducted by Kane Energy. Now the details were provided. Then in the year 2015, the tax officials basically said, since you have gone for this kind of a reorganization, we are raising a tax demand on this. And a tax demand was sent. Now against this particular demand, Kane Energy went to court and this particular issue was still pending, and suddenly in the year 2018, Government of India took over the shares of a Kane Energy in Vedanta company and started selling these particular shares. So Kane Energy had around 5% stake ownership or equity ownership in Vedanta company. Government of India took over this, even took over the dividend that this particular company was supposed to receive and started selling of the share. And after setting off, again sent remaining amount of a tax notice to this particular company. And this company took this particular case to international arbitration. And very recently, this particular international arbitration has ruled in the favor of Kane Energy. Now this is the story in short. Should you mug up the whole story? Not important. What is important is on what basis Government of India raised the tax demand here. The tax officials use the provisions under Retrospective Taxation Law under Income Tax Act of 1961. Now what is this particular Retrospective Taxation Law? Before that, please make a note of this. Under IT Act, Section 91I basically deals with the idea of a retrospective taxation. Now basic idea of a retrospective law is this. Imagine on 1st January, Government of India basically says the income tax rates applicable to all the individuals in India will be 30%. Again, just a hypothetical situation, Government of India has not done this. So on 1st January 2021, Government of India says the income tax rates applicable to all the Indians will be how much? 30%. But government also says this rate will not be applicable from today onwards. Rather, it will be applicable from 1st January 2019. So what does it mean? The law has been passed today, but the application of law has been backdated. We are going in the past and we are taking certain transaction and we are imposing the new law or the new provision on the old transaction. This is basically the concept of a retrospective taxation. So Government of India in 2012 amended the Income Tax Act of 1961, introduced this particular section, hence introduced the concept of a retrospective taxation. And using these particular provisions itself, the tax officials sent a tax notice to Kane Energy as well as a tax demand notice to Vodafone company also. So what happened after that? So the company went to the court, again went to international arbitration, and in the international arbitration, basically the arbitration cited certain points to rule in favor of Kane Energy. First very important point. This particular tax demand which has been raised by the Government of India is not according to the norms. It is not correct. That's the first very important point. And the second very important point is the Government of India has not provided fair and equitable treatment to this particular investment or investment done by this particular company. Now what is this idea of a fair and equitable treatment? Please remember this particular term, it could be asked in the UPSC prelims. The idea of a fair and equitable treatment is generally a part of a bilateral investment treaties, BITs. The bilateral investment treaties are signed between two countries. This will basically promote investments across the border, and not only promote, it will also protect the interest of the investments across the border. For example, if a foreign investor, let's say from USA, has invested in India, whenever there is a change in the government, the change in the policy of the government should not affect the investments done by the foreign investor. So how do we ensure the protection done by these particular investors in India? We have signed the concepts of bilateral investment treaties. India has been signing bilateral investment treaties since 1990s, but recently in 2014-2015, Government of India did away with all of these existing bilateral investment treaties and has introduced a new model bilateral investment treaty, and it is negotiating with various other countries under this particular new model BIT. One of the very important contention of Government of India over a period of time has been this. These kind of tax disputes should not be purview of the bilateral investment treaties, rather these are sovereign issues. That is basically whenever there is a dispute related to taxation, these have to be handled and taken care of within the domestic market itself rather than taking it to international arbitration. So in essence, what happened in this particular case is, since the Kane Energy went to international arbitration cited these particular issues and ruled in the favor of Kane Energy. And not only this, it has asked the Government of India to pay huge amount of damages as well as the compensation to this particular company. If Government of India does not abide by this particular ruling, then Kane Energy can simply approach judiciary and confiscate any assets which are owned by India in the overseas market. So these are certain very important points related to this particular article. Next, with respect to the Vodafone case verdict, in the earlier videos we have already discussed in detail what has happened in case of Vodafone. Essentially, it is an update with respect to those particular articles. The update is that Government of India has decided to file an appeal against Vodafone case verdict. Even in case of Vodafone case, what did the tax officials had raised a retrospective taxation demand. Vodafone company appealed against it, and international arbitration ruled in favor of Vodafone and asked Government of India to compensate Vodafone company. And Government of India very recently stated that it has decided to file an appeal against this particular verdict. So these are the two very important articles with respect to retrospective taxation, fair and equitable treatment, bilateral investment treaties, etc. Now based on this discussion, let me take up certain questions. Consider the following statements. Section 91I of Income Tax Act provides for retrospective taxation. Statement is correct. This amendment to the IT Act was done in the year 2013. No, it was done in 2012. So right option is option A, only one is true. The term fair and equitable treatment appearing in the newspaper refers to. Now before looking at the options, understand this. Fair and equitable treatment basically is a provision under the bilateral investment treaties. What does the provision actually mean? It simply means that whenever the foreign investors or foreign businesses want to conduct a business in India, the Government of India's policies without any reason should not hamper the business conducted by these foreign businessmen. I'll repeat the process here again. Whenever foreign investors or the companies want to conduct business in India, the policy of Government of India in any way, without any reason, without any rationality, should not hamper the business activity conducted by these particular foreign companies in India. So that is the basic idea of a fair and equitable treatment. So right option is option B. Conduct of a foreign investor business is not hampered by the host government without any good reason. Right option is option B here. The next article is with respect to DTH and FDI. Essentially, Government of India has announced certain very important measures in case of a DTH operators. And the article basically discusses or critically evaluates these particular changes. First and foremost, certain important points are this. In case of India, there are more than 200 million cable and satellite households. So there is a need to regulate the services which are provided to these particular huge number of consumers in the market. Second very important point is, very recently, TRAI has come out with the guidelines as per which the pricing of the packages which was supposed to be provided by these particular DTH operators has been decided. Against this, the DTH operators over a period of time have been raising certain concerns. Their concerns are basically like this. They are saying that if the pricing is fixed by TRAI, that is a TRAI, then there is no pricing flexibility or freedom given to me, that is the DTH operators or suppliers. And since we do not have any kind of a flexibility, we have been reduced to basically a service provider, basically who keeps on providing channels to the consumer, so that's it. In order to address these kind of issues or concerns raised by the DTH operators, Government of India very recently has introduced certain very important measures or reforms in this particular segment. These reforms can be discussed under three heads. One, with respect to FDI, foreign direct investment. Second, with respect to sharing of infrastructure. And third very important point is with respect to revenue sharing model. Let me start with the first one, foreign direct investment. So far, FDI up to 49% was allowed in this particular broadcasting segment or DTH segment. Now, Government of India has essentially increased this to 100% FDI. That's the first very important point. As a result of this, we are expecting huge amount of foreign capital flows or foreign investors investing in this particular segment. Second, if different companies or different operators are using the same platform, then some amount of a hardware infrastructure can be shared by these kind of operators. As a result of this, it is expected that cost of operations for these particular operators is expected to come down, and Government of India says they expect these operators to use this amount to invest and provide superior quality of services to the consumers. Now, how much of this is going to happen, you will have to wait and see. And the final one is with respect to the revenue sharing model. Earlier, as per the provisions, the companies were supposed to provide 10% of annual gross revenues to Government of India. This was the revenue sharing model. Now, this has been reduced to 8% of adjusted gross revenues. Now, how adjusted gross revenues will be calculated? The total revenues, that is the gross revenues of the operator minus the GST that has been paid by the operator, right? This will be adjusted gross revenues. In addition to this, the fourth very important change is the licensing regime. Earlier, the license that was issued was for a period of 10 years or the tenure of 10 years. Now this has been increased to 20 years. And not only this, Government of India stated that once the license tenure is over, term is over, next renewal is going to happen for a tenure of 10 years. That is, the tenure period will be 10 years. So these are certain very important changes that have been introduced in case of the DTH segment. Now why these changes are very important? First and foremost, as earlier I said, there is a huge number of consumers in the market. So the DTH operators are expected to provide superior quality of services to them. And in recent times, the OTT platform, over the top platform, have been taking away or siphoning away a substantial number of urban consumers from DTH platform to their own platform, that is the OTT platform. As a result of this, the advertisement revenue of these particular DTH operators are getting affected. So with these particular reforms, we expect the revenues of these particular DTH operators to increase. Not only this, DTH segment is one of the very important labor intensive sector. And Government of India says a huge number of labor opportunities would be created and existing labor will be sustained because of these particular reforms introduced by the government. So these are certain very important reforms which Government of India has announced in case of a DTH segment. So these are the articles as well as the questions related to articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.